Good morning, everybody. We're happy to see you this morning. Glad you could join us. We'll take just a minute to wait for others to get into the room with us. And while we're waiting for them, take a minute to go into the chat and let us know your name and where you're from. And that will help us get a sense of who's with us this morning. So thank you again for joining us. My name is Doug Dixon. I'm the board chair for Encore Boston Network. I'm happy to welcome you to our program this morning, Aging in Place. We're going to take a look at the village movement. So while you're waiting, we'll get started in just a minute. Let us know who you are and where you're calling in from. And I see Barbara Sullivan, and I see Elsa, and I see other members of the panel, and let's see who else is with us as well.
Is that better? Is the volume okay? Can you hear everything?
Yeah.
And let me remind you to mute yourself, please, so that we don't have distracting background sounds. Always a challenge with Zoom. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to get started. My name is Doug Dixon. I'm board chair of Encore Boston Network. And if you don't know us, we help people over 50 make a difference through work, service, and social action. And we're very excited to be bringing you this webinar this morning on aging in place. If you haven't already done so, please enter your name and where you're dialing in from in the chat box. The chat box is how we'll be communicating with each other and with the panelists as well. So keep that in mind. You can learn more about Encore Boston Network from our website, which is encorebostonnetwork.org. And while you're there, you can check other events that we hold regularly and sign up for our monthly newsletter, which is one of the ways you find out about upcoming events and other kinds of opportunities. And also think about joining our community as a member. It's free and it's easy. Today, our focus is on aging in place. Many of you joined us in January when we took a look at the housing market in general and the growing range of options that people over 50 have available to them. Today, we're excited to focus on one option in particular, and that has come to be called aging in place. We know from research that most people say they want to remain in their homes and in their communities as they get older. But we also know that priorities change, relationships change, circumstances often change, and that can raise questions about how people can remain in their homes and in their communities. Please mute yourself, everyone. So to address these questions, new ideas are emerging, and one of those is the village movement, and that's what we want to explore in more detail today. Our program has two sections. In the first, we'll hear from Barbara Sullivan, who is the National Director of the Village to Village movement, and that's an umbrella organization that brings together all of the villages across the US and abroad. And she'll tell us more about what the villages are and how they work. Then we'll hear from the leaders of 4 villages in our area. First, we'll hear from Gina Morrison, who is the Executive Director of Beacon Hill Village, which is the original village, pioneered 15 years ago. And then we'll hear from Jan Latourie Stiller, Executive Director of Cambridge Neighbors. And she'll be joined by Patricia Barger, who is a member of Cambridge Neighbors. Then we'll hear from Elsa Bengal, who is a founding member of JP at Home. And finally from Maureen Gannon, who is Executive Director of Newton at Home. Our panelists promised to keep their remarks brief so that we have plenty of time for questions. And let me suggest that as you have questions, as questions occur to you, during the various presentations, that you write those into the chat and we'll keep track of them. And then when we get to the the end of the program, we'll address as many of those questions as we can. Since we have a large group today, a few suggestions to webinar go smoothly. One is, please keep yourself muted. Background noise can be very distracting for the presenters and for everyone else. As I mentioned, use the chat to let us know what you think, if you have a comment to share, or if you have a question to ask. In the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you see something called View. If you click on that, that will allow you to select whether you want to see the speaker next to the slides, or you can select Gallery, which will allow you to see everyone in the audience as well. This event is being recorded, and we'll send an email with the recording and a copy of the slides and other contact and resource information within a few days after the event today. So now, on with the show, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce Barbara Sullivan, National Director of the Village to Village Network.
Well, thank you, Doug, and good morning, everyone. Thank you, Encore Boston Network, for including me today in this panel discussion. I'm excited to see so many people from far and wide. Next slide, please. There we go. We're celebrating 20 years of the Village Movement this year. And so you'll see this theme throughout some of the conversations today. And I'm going to let my next presenter talk about the origins, but I'm going to talk a little bit about villages and why now. Next slide. What is a village? Villages are volunteer-driven community organizations that provide services enabling older adults to live longer, healthier, and happier lives at home with choices and ongoing connections to their communities. Villages provide an affordable alternative to social, educational, practical, day-to-day resources and services to assist
I'm on this thing. I'm gonna go do this.
members.
Please mute yourself.
Thank you. Practical day-to-day resources and services to assist their members with transitions of aging. These self-governing villages differ throughout the country, and they reflect most certainly the communities they serve. Next slide. Why villages now? We believe that older adults are valued members of society. We believe that older adults should live independent, vibrant lives full of human connection, continued learning, caring for each other, and giving back to their homes and communities. We believe that all older adults should have the option to live independently and participate fully in their communities. We promote the village model because it is a self-help philosophy, grassroots community connection, peer-to-peer reciprocity of action, creating an environment of opportunities and choices for older adults to remain active and engaged. Many years ago, we realized the need for the middle America to have some of the resources traditional resources that were not available to them. Villages now facilitate knowledge exchange and discussion forums. They advocate at local, state, and national organizations with the help of Village to Village Network. Next slide. As you can see in this diagram, the village is the middle, the conduit to all these different, areas of need as we age in our communities. Older Americans and older members are connected to volunteers of all ages, and they provide services around the home, the yard, access to community, and social engagement. Services villages provide include transportation, like medical appointments, groceries, running errands, prescriptions, grocery delivery, yard work, snow shoveling, technology. We learned all too well about technology during COVID. And coaching, to help, with the tech, light cleaning and organizing around the house, and caregiver respite. Social programming includes a variety of things, and you're going to hear from other villages today about, some of the programs and things that we do. COVID provided our model with older adults to support their neighbors and connections in community. We learned that through COVID and the pandemic, that we not only survived as grassroots organizations, we thrived as national, as organizations embedded in communities. Next slide. These are just some, you've seen us in the news. Obviously, we were just in ABC News the other night talking about villages, but here are some of the examples of some of the, over the last 20 years, what villages have been doing and the stronghold it's taken in our home and base communities. Next slide. Here's just a sample of our villages throughout the United States. As you can see, coast to coast, on either end of the coast, we have an abundance of villages concentrated in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, and then on the West Coast. We're slowly growing in the Midwest, which is great. Currently, there are 280 villages that are open and operating, and another about 80 that are either in exploratory or developing. So we're excited. We're in 45 states plus the District of Columbia, and also 4 countries. Next slide. Here's my contact information, and I look forward to hearing from everyone on this panel and questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. And let me take a minute to just remind you to take a look at your mute button and make sure that it has a little X across it, because it is distracting when we hear background noise. So now we'd like to hear from Gina Morrison from Beacon Hill Village.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Doug, thanks so much for bringing this group together. It was really exciting to get the email. Aging in place, I don't know, we think, of course, we're all biased, has never been more important. Like Barbara Sullivan said, COVID, I think, shone a bright light on the importance of community-based services, the importance of neighbors, people coming together, helping with all those essential things, especially during lockdown. So I'm delighted to be here. Next slide, please. So indeed, Doug said in the introduction, Beacon Hill Village was the first. So this is the beginning of the village movement. It all started in 1999, literally in Beacon Hill. I'm here in Beacon Hill in Boston right now speaking. A handful of neighbors got together, and their foresight is really quite amazing. They looked at their parents, grandparents. They said, that is not how we see our future. Aging was perceived as negative, like failing, frailing, falling apart, your worst years, not your best years. You might end up in a nursing home or a retirement community. They wanted to do it differently. They wanted control, and they wanted aging to be positive. They wanted it to be something that they could look forward to, that they could grow, they could be with friends, they could really see that as a bright spot in their future. So they created this virtual village. They wanted access to services for when they needed it. Like Barbara was talking about the variety, home repair and care when their homes started failing in those 5 story walk-ups in Beacon Hill with these crazy hills. Who's going to change the light bulb? Healthcare, access to healthcare providers. Boston is an amazing community for arts and culture, education. So they wanted to take advantage of that. In fact, one of the things they created, which is a whole nother organization separate from us today, but Beacon Hill Seminars, so that they could keep learning, lifelong learning. But they created a way to get together with friends, to go to the theater, go to the opera, go to the museum, and created organized programs. So this is from zero. So fast forward 20 years later, it is our 20th birthday this year. We incorporated in 2001 and took our first member in January 2002. So today we have just over 350 members all across Boston, not just Beacon Hill. Today our members are about 2/3 women, 1/3 men, wide range, 54 to 100. And our 100th centenarian is a lovely lady. We just love her. Vibrant, we help her with services, we help her with rides, etc. But she's quite a hoot and a lovely person to speak to. We're a membership organization. And you'll find when you hear from different villages, some of the villages have no fees. We are a fee-based. We have a small staff of 5 staff members. So you can join as an individual, you can join as a household, you can join for 6 months to try us out. And the regular fees are $675 for an individual, $975 for a household. Depending on your income, you might qualify for a subsidized membership, which is substantially lower, which would be $110 for an individual or $160 for a household. Next slide, please. So this is just to reiterate the point. We are more than Beacon Hill. And those little dots, this map was done a couple months ago, but they represented all our members. Certainly there's a concentration in Beacon Hill, that upper right part of it, but we extend, as we say, from the north end of Boston to Fenway. In terms of our elliptical distance, we go to the Charles River and Back Bay. We go to the south end. We have a couple members outside of our area. We have a member in Brookline, maybe 1 or 2 in Charlestown. So we're downtown central Boston, and that's our base, and that's where we're looking to grow. So the Beacon Hill name sometimes trips us up because people think you have to live in Beacon Hill, but really you could be anywhere in central Boston. Next slide, please. This is a little fancier version of Barbara's diagram about what we do. So it's essentially, we call it aging a place. 20 years ago, that term didn't even exist. I think it's more commonplace now. This idea that older adults, and AARP, as Doug noted, has done a lot of research on this. If they can, they want to stay in their own homes and in their own neighborhoods for as long as that's possible. At some point, sometimes they need more healthcare. They might need to move to assisted living, or they don't want to deal with the 5-story walk-ups in the crazy hills in Beacon Hill, and they want to go to that, maybe a concierge building, or they want to go to a retirement community where the living and the physical living is a lot easier. But for the most part, our members like the neighborhood, they like their neighbors. And these are all the things that we do in a variety of ways. Barbara mentioned the tech help, the home maintenance, care coordination. Sometimes people join us because they're having a hip replacement or a knee replacement, and they might live alone. And they know that when they get home, they're going to need help with getting groceries or preparing meals or just getting around the house. So we've had people join telling us, I have upcoming surgery. Can you connect me to home health aides and home care and maybe a ride and maybe some volunteers? And that's what we mean by care coordination, bringing services to bear when that person comes home. And that's a handful of, just one of the reasons people join. But we have fitness programs 3 times a week. We have meditation and yoga. Learning is a big thing. Speaker series on health-related topics and really any related topic that we do. We're an information center. People call us up and say, I need help with X. I need help with my tax return. I need help with my, toilet that's running over. So if we don't have a vetted service provider to provide a name for, we'll go look up information. We have drivers who can get people from A to B. Our drivers work for us. Our members don't do that for other members, and our volunteers don't drive our members, but we have paid drivers who will take you from A to B or appointments or to the airport, et cetera. But these were just two quotes from two members. One member looked at the village and saw that she could actually create kind of a support community within the community. And she's got a whole series of folks that kind of join her for meditation, join her for a walk. It's almost like a little pod within the village, which is marvelous. And this other woman, she's taken advantage of, like it says, delivery, groceries, rides, programs. Those are just two of the many ways that people age in place. Next slide, please. These are our core principles. We're member driven. So that means that the members make up the board and our committee, and they're strategic in their planning. We collaborate as staff. Mind, body, and spirit means lifelong learning, fitness programs, and spirit meaning having purpose, being involved or engaged in running programs or just participating. In partnering, we take advantage of other organizations in the city that we can partner with. We don't have any physical space, so we partner with the library or King's Chapel Parish House. Next slide, please. These are just some of the many ways people get involved in the village. We have interest groups, book groups and movie groups. There's a New Yorker hour. We do crossword puzzles, and all of this became very famous over Zoom. But I mentioned our speaker series, Living Well, Ending Well in Conversation With, our fitness classes. People volunteer, they lead committees. And of course, we have lots and lots of activities, and we're starting to do things together in person or outside, doing the lunch trips or doing the museum trips. And final slide, please. So volunteering is important. Most of our volunteers are our members. They take part in our internal activities. They might be the tech person that's going to go to another member's house, but we also have volunteers in the community. So for any of those, watching today, and if you're in the Boston area and interested in spending a couple hours a month with some older adults, you're pretty good with a computer. Usually the problems that we give to volunteers are relatively small. If it's a serious computer problem, we have service providers. But we're always looking for folks to help with an errand or maybe picking up prescription or doing a medical escort. Sometimes members just need something small, like I have a box going to recycling or to donate. Can you take these books somewhere? So there's lots of opportunities for the community if people are interested in volunteering. There's lots of things our members do internally to support each other and to support the village. So I think I will stop there telling my story and pass the baton back to you, Doug.
Thank you, Gina. And I didn't mean to shortchange you 5 years on your history.
That's okay.
I somehow got lost. So now I'd like to welcome Jan Latore-Stiller from Cambridge Neighbors and Patricia Barg.
Hi there, everyone. Thanks for coming today. Doug and Mary, thanks for organizing this. It's a great program, and we're all proud of our villages. So I don't want to be repetitive. Gina covered a lot of ground, and Cambridge Neighbors actually is very similar to the structure of Beacon Hill Village. We help people in our communities, and there are 5 communities we cover, not only Cambridge, but Arlington, Belmont, Somerville, and Watertown. We help people in those communities who find themselves at a stage of life where they feel they need practical and social supports to successfully remain in their homes and communities. And like I said, we're very similar to what Gina described. We provide practical and material supports through volunteers and vetted vendors. And then the other side, which is equally important, is providing members with social supports through a lot of the programming we do, which is intended to connect people. I guess, I'm very low tech. I didn't bring a lot of slides. This is pretty much it. But I wanted to tell you a story, and this just happened yesterday, that illustrates what the benefit of being a part of a village can mean to somebody. We had received a notice from the daughter-in-law of a member who had recently passed away. She was notifying us to let us know that her mother-in-law had a caretaker who was amazing, and that she wanted to let us know so we could pass her on to maybe another member who needed that kind of service. So coincidentally, we have a member who recently lost his wife, has Parkinson's disease, and we set him up with at-home services. There were some challenges to that for him, and we met with him and his 2 daughters yesterday over Zoom to try to figure out how we could help. And what we proposed to them is that we would get in contact with the daughter-in-law of the recently passed away member and ask her if the caretaker was still available. The caretaker is still available, and at this moment, I think they are connecting to see if there is some sort of way that she can help. So to me, that is the essence of the village movement, that sort of intimate knowledge of members, what their needs are, the feeling of connection, and wanting to help. So that's my story. I do have with me today, since villages are very member-centric and member-led, and Gina underscored that as well, I wanted to include a member in this discussion. And so I am delighted to have Pat Barger with us. She's one of our members. She joined us in 2019. And so Pat, do you want to say a few words about your experience as a member of Cambridge Neighbors?
I'd love to share. Certainly you and Gina have said a great overview. I would like to say as a member that I have 4 words, which I hope will help others make some choices: lifeline, one-stop shopping, choice, and economical. Having looked at about 7 assisted livings in the last 3 or 4 years, in state and out of state, I've been appalled at the price, regardless of where they are. And most of them don't include medical support. And I think as we age, we don't think about this. Aging is not something one of us thinks about until we get to a certain point where possibly our health or a loved one has been impaired. Sadly, as a young widow, I experienced the isolation that many of us have as we age and become elders. And so for me, having lost 2 partners, husband and a gentleman 20 years thereafter, once the child rearing abated and you were used to the company of a gentleman, there was a big hole. And I will say that Cambridge Neighbors has filled that, obviously with our technologies during Zoom. I don't think any of us should have felt alone because of the choice, very similar to the Beacon Hill. The intellectual mind-body stimulation is excellent if you wish to jump in. And having done a creative writing course with a wonderful instructor, Dudley White, even the faintest of heart and the most timid writer, he was wise enough to draw out each of these men and women in that course. For those that love yoga, meditation, or just stretching, all these things are available. We have walks, talks, we have estate, financial planning, and the vendors are brought in. So if families are unfamiliar with these services, Cambridge Neighbors has offered that. So I am very grateful to recommend, and it's easy on the pocketbook. Maybe they should increase their membership fee, I think, when I look at the appalling prices of assisted living and what isn't given, you offer a great deal more. So, thank you.
Thank you, Pat, and to Jan for making the villages very personal and helping us understand the benefits from a personal perspective. And now I'd like to introduce Elsa Bengal from JP at Home. Elsa, you're muted, I believe.
Very happy to be here and to talk to you. Could you show the first slide? So JP stands for Jamaica Plain, which is one neighborhood of Boston. And you can see on this map that Beacon Hill Village covers most of the neighborhoods to the right on our map. We began in Jamaica Plain, but very quickly we had lots of requests from people nearby to join. And so after a year and a half, we expanded to all of the contiguous neighborhoods, including Brookline, which borders a great deal of Jamaica Plain. And you can see here that member driven. And the thing that's unique about our village is that we are a program of Ethos, and Ethos is our aging services organization for the southwest part of Boston. When we began, we're in our 8th year. Those of us who had those first conversations had recently stopped working full-time, and we've raised the question of who could we partner with. Next slide. And so we approached Ethos and Dale Mitchell, who was the executive director at that time, and said, what about a collaboration? And so we are a program of Ethos, and that means that Ethos carries all of the administrative needs for the organization. Our one coordinator, we have one paid staff person who is an employee with benefits through Ethos, which is we see as a great advantage. And then we have an advisory council of members and 3 committees. And the thing that happened when we did this, that we didn't really understand at the beginning, was that because Ethos was carrying the administrative parts of this, it freed up the members to develop and lead programs. And so all of our programs are designed and led by our members. And our coordinator is our single point of contact, and she has access to Ethos staff and resources. So she's sort of a gateway or so forth. And this has proven to be incredibly creative and a low-cost way to have a village. We have about 150 members, and Jamaica Plain and Roslindale are the largest groups, but we have people in all of those other neighborhoods that you saw on the map. Next slide, please. So just to give you an idea, boy, do we wish we could do dining out again. That picture at the top, it's, you know, we would go to a different restaurant each month and go on Tuesday at 5:30 when they had very few customers and fill up the place for a while. and go out for dinner. Porch Fest is the bottom picture, but you can see on this calendar, there are things happening every day, except Sunday. And what we have become really is a network of small groups. And I think that our most active, or the groups that have the most members, are living alone groups. And I say groups because as they grow, a second or a third living alone group spins off. We have 5 aging and spirituality groups. We have 5 walking groups, and Teach Tech to Me, which is run by members, provided amazing tech support when we switched to Zoom in 2020. Next slide, please. We keep in touch with each other through a monthly newsletter, and we also have a online service that we use to post events, to ask questions. Most of the helping comes from members. We also have vetted vendors that Ethos can refer us to. And I would say that one of the things that has been so valuable, because they're the aging services provider, they have access to all the information about aging services and can tailor responses when people need help. Each member gets a home visit, and it can be once a year. Most of us don't do it that often, but that home visit is a way to get to know people and understand what they're looking forward to and so forth. Next slide, please. We have 2 levels of membership. This is under discussion right now, but at the moment we have 2 levels of membership. And so a full membership provides access to all the activities, as well as a concierge service, a yearly needs and safety assessment, and access to a geriatric care manager. And, you know, things happen, and to be able to know that in one phone call, that single point of contact is so helpful in terms of putting together care plans for yourself or for a loved one. Next slide. And this is our contact information. I could mention that Jennifer is actually moving on. And so we're recruiting right now for a new coordinator, but that phone number and that email will work just fine. Finally, I'd like to say that for me, when I'm doing, every month we do a presentation to new members, our recruitment committee. And, you know, I like to say that there's a saying that money can't buy happiness, but I would say that your membership fee will guarantee you happiness. And this has been true for me and for my husband. And so if anyone on this call is in our area and you're interested, please get in touch. We are eager to welcome you. Thank you.
Thanks, Elsa. And if someone on the call is interested in learning more about the position, should they be in touch with you, or how should they proceed?
They should go to the website for Ethos, ethocare.org, and they can also find it on Indeed.
Okay, great, good, thank you.
Yep.
Never know, maybe somebody will be.
You never know, right?
Thank you, Elsa. And now we'd like to hear from Maureen Grannon at Newton at Home. Maureen?
Okay, I said good morning. Thank you for having us. This has been wonderful. We actually are a very tight group here, the group that you have amassed today. Newton at Home is a suburban village. We are right next to Boston. And, you know, not to be redundant, we do almost identical services to everything that has been presented today. We are also a membership organization and definitely membership driven. What I wanted to speak to a little bit is how things have been during the pandemic. And I think Gina said this has been our most challenging time, and it certainly has for 2 years. We have put the focus on a couple of things at Newton at Home, and one of them is dealing with the social isolation that people are feeling and expressing to us. And how we've been dealing with that is teaching technology, and other groups have done this as well. We have a large group of volunteers who are tech experts. We've gone out, we've helped people buy computers, and mostly these are members who are scared to death of computers and now have become masters of Zoom and Facebook and Skype, and are keeping in touch with their families, which is, you know, one of the most important things that I think has been helpful during this time. We also make a lot of personal calls to our members, just checking in once a week. How you doing? What can we do for you? And people, our members are really used to that now and really count on hearing from us, since so many of them are not even leaving their homes still to this day. Our program director has been really good about providing a lot of diverse problems. We've done Zoom trips to museums, art projects that we do at home through Zoom. And there's really something for everybody to participate in if they want to. We will also call people and encourage them to sign up. There are some people who are a little more shy about that. And we really help to encourage that. One of the most important things that we have done over the past 2 years, we were fortunate enough to have one of our board members is an international epidemiologist, and he has provided regular updates from the CDC and the state to our members, which we have shared with other villages around us. And this has helped us to get members from one village to another, meeting each other and talking. And I think it has been one of the things that has really been validating to people and clarifying, you know, as what are the right things that we should do and what shouldn't we be doing. We are also working on, Newton is known as a very affluent city. It is, but there's also a lot of people who are not at all affluent, and we are recruiting those people who are sort of behind the scenes. So we're getting a lot of referrals from our case managers at the hospital through City Hall, and we are marketing and targeting that group for our membership and also donations. We have a reduced fee membership fund that is restricted, and we can bring on people based on a ratio of how much income they have for the year. So basically, what we're trying to do is just connect one-on-one with our members and their adult children, who take a lot of solace in knowing that we're there and we're checking on mom or dad, and just assuring that we can assist people with the best quality of life that they can have right now, given the circumstances. So that's where I'll leave off. And Doug, back to you.
Thank you, Maureen. And thanks to everyone for keeping within their allotted times, because that gives us time for questions. And now it's, we have some questions lined up. And if you have questions that you haven't yet put in the chat, now is your chance to do that. So first of all, someone asked a question about what other countries, and Barbara was good enough to indicate that in the chat. So in addition to the US, there are villages in Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and Belgium. And I suspect that list will grow. One question came up about revenue. You talked about fees. Are there other sources of revenue? Maureen, you mentioned donations. Are there other sources of revenue that that you might speak about? Anyone? Barbara, do you want to jump in on that one and then see if others want to follow?
Sure. You know, those that have membership, you know, nobody wants to charge membership fees, but in order to have operations, it's important to, you know, there's a lot of financials that are involved with running a village. And you could be an all-volunteer village, but you still have, you know, the background checks, the insurance, you know, things that, you know, you need to operate a business. So membership dues cover about, I don't know, 50 to 60% of most budgets of any village across the board. And y'all that are on here can tell me yes or no. Villages look, and most of 99% of our villages are nonprofits. So they are a combination of donations to, you know, whether they have fundraisers. Grant writing is a big component of a lot of our villages, getting grants from foundations and state, you know, monies. Partnering with other aging organizations. We have a great growing list of villages that are partnering with their area agencies on aging and getting monies through that. It is a challenge and it's an uphill challenge because villages are continually doing fundraising and whatnot. Anybody else want to chirp in?
Barbara, I think I was going to say everything you said. Our membership revenues are probably just half of our budget, but private donations, a major fundraiser that we do each year, private foundations, we do not get any city, state, or federal money.
Okay. And what about the membership fees? You mentioned, Gina, the fees that you charge. There's a question about what other villages that are on the program today charge. Can you, Jan, do you want to tell us briefly what your?
Sure. We have a variety of memberships, a variety of levels. The full membership, which is what most people go with, for an individual is $85 a month. We allow people to do that. They sign for a year and they pay $85 a month, or they'll pay in full if they're able to do that. For a couple, it's $110 a month. Again, they can pay in full at the outset or do it monthly. There's a gateway membership that is available for people who just want access to the social stuff, you know, and want to make social connections. They also are able to go to our twice weekly exercise classes. So that's, I'll just give you the annual on that. That's $500 a year for an individual, $750 for a couple. And that we do raise money for subsidized memberships. So that's important to us. And we continue to do that. And in terms of fundraising, you know, I agree with both Barbara and Gina that we always have to fundraise. Membership fees do not cover our budget. And so we get funding from individuals, a lot of donations from actual members, which is interesting. And I have to say that I don't feel that villages should not charge a fee. I mean, I think people are willing to pay for something of value. And so I don't apologize for charging a fee.
Thanks, Jen.
Like Pat Barger said, our member, economically, it does make a lot of sense and it's a great value.
Good, thank you. That's helpful. And just numbers, because we have a lot of other questions. I want to make sure we get to them. Elsa, what are the numbers that, you know, the ballpark numbers for your organization?
Sure. I was just typing into the chat.
Oh, good idea.
I'll keep doing that, okay?
Good.
But basically, we're quite different. 90% of our income is from membership fees. Because we're part of Ethos, you know, they do any fundraising and control that. And our fees are $28 a month for a social membership, $41 a month for a full membership, and $71 a month for a household membership. And we're about to increase our rates for the first time in 8 years, but it's amounts to about a $10 a month increase. So
Okay, great.
that's
Thank
our
you.
story.
So you can see already there's some differences in the models. Maureen, just briefly.
Yeah, our household membership is $850 and our individual is $725. We also have a breakaway membership, which is folks who get services for 9 months and then are away for 3 months. So that is $640 for a household and about $500 for an individual. And then we have just a social membership where all they do is go to programs. They don't have access to the services, the practical services. And then, as I said before, we have our reduced fee membership based on income.
Great, thank you. So as you can see, each of the villages is independent, makes their own decisions. They abide by basically a format and a structure, but a lot of local variation. And I would say there are a lot of questions about where villages are located. And I think the best way to deal with that question is to go to the map at either the Village to Village Network or Beacon Hill Village has a map on their site, and that shows you where all of the locations are. But be sure to check with each website, because they often cover surrounding, as you've learned this morning, surrounding areas. The name may not necessarily indicate the precise boundaries for the village. One of the questions that's come up is about growth, and in particular during the pandemic. Has the pandemic had an effect on growth, either pro or con?
Yes,
Jan, you want to? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, we added new members, and also I should say our retention rate is very high. We're retaining 95% of our members.
Okay.
And I also put in chat that during the pandemic, at the start of the pandemic, we had a village that actually started developing at the height of the pandemic and opened during the pandemic. So there was a need for, a real desire to start and develop and successfully manage a village.
In my experience with Cambridge Neighbors, we sort of maintained, we didn't increase or decrease, and our retention rate is very high as well. I think some people were nervous about joining anything during the pandemic, especially before a vaccine was available, because so much of it is about connection. Even with volunteers, aside from the social stuff, obviously, even getting help from volunteers, we shut down our volunteer program temporarily because we didn't want to put our volunteers at risk. So it's sort of evened out. That's my experience anyway.
Good. Anyone else want to chip in? Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Initially, when the pandemic started and there was so much death in the assisted livings and nursing homes, we had a big influx of memberships at that time. People who had been thinking about going to nursing homes now wouldn't have anything to do with it. So they joined Newton at Home. that sort of evened out for a while. We maintained all of our members, and now that things are starting to open up again, we're getting a pretty big influx of new members.
Good. Someone asked if there are only villages around Boston, and no, that's not the case. It's just that we're located in Boston, and the villages that we invited to participate happen to be in the Boston area. But there, as you may have noticed from when Barbara was presenting, there are villages all across the country. So be sure, if you're living in a different area, to check the maps and the lists and identify where there are villages in your area. Okay. I see that we have time for one more question. There was a question about paid staff, what paid staff can do versus volunteer staff. And the answer seems to be what can be done based on insurance requirements versus other requirements. Are there any other things that people should know about or think about if they're interested in volunteering or participating in some way in supporting villages? Do you have to be insured? Do you have to have certain credentials? Do you have to pass certain tests and so on?
I would add that, I put a note into the chat that our drivers are only paid. It's not true of all villages, and I'm sure other villages, volunteers do offer rides, and in many villages, members will help each out. It's much more member to member in other villages. So I just want to, what do we say in the village land? If you see one village, you've seen one village. Don't extrapolate outside of Beacon Hill Village. It's just our insurance and liability coverage that we could get in downtown Boston means that we cover the member and the driver if anything happens. So we do Corey checks, we do background checks, and we do, we check what references almost for our volunteers, almost like hiring someone. So we want to know what they've done, what they're doing. And it's not as maybe as intensive of what volunteers do in other organizations, but I think right now in the pandemic, we're asking everybody to be vaccinated. So I think we're reflecting the times, but I think I'm sure Maureen's nodding her head, and I know that Jan has different rules, and I think she has different drivers in her villages, so I will stop. But just know that check with the different organizations, because we all have different needs and different requirements.
Jan, did you want to add anything?
Just that, we vet all our volunteers. We do Corey checks. If they're driving, we check their R&B records, and they have to give us proof of liability insurance. And yes, like Gina said, they have to be fully vaccinated. And also the members have to be fully vaccinated if they're using a volunteer. So we have COVID policy, all of us probably have that at this point in time. Anyway, so we're careful. We have to be.
Good. So if you have an interest in volunteering, contact any of the people that you see this morning on our screen. And if you'd like to learn more about the programs and membership, you can contact any of the people who've spoken this morning. And I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. And we will, as I mentioned earlier, provide information, a copy of the recording for the program today, as well as the slides, which have a lot of detail, and contact information as well. So a huge thank you to Barbara, Gina, Jan, Patricia, Elsa, and Maureen for taking the time this morning to help us learn more about the Village movement, and for a very informative and enlightening discussion. So we have a question for you. You've had great questions for us, so now a question for you. Did you learn anything or hear anything this morning that makes a difference in your understanding of your options for aging in place? And if so, let us know in the chat. And also let us know any comments that you have or any suggestions, either about this program or for upcoming programs. So if you don't mind taking a moment to do that, we would really appreciate it. As noted earlier, we'll be sending some information out to you in a few days. Thank you for your participation. Finally, we hope you'll take a look at the website for upcoming events. We have an event on April 20th talking about volunteer service and the impact of the pandemic on volunteer service and what you might expect going forward as things continue to shift and shake out. There is a group meeting at the end of the month of people who are thinking about shifting their focus in terms of what work they do, perhaps away from employment to independent work, freelance, consulting, contract work, gig work, and so on. If that's an interest of yours, please join us. In May, we'll be having another age-friendly employer forum. For those of you who have attended those in the past, it's a chance to meet employers who explicitly are looking to hire older workers. And many other programs coming up as well, and as well as programs that we promote for our partners, the people that we work together with in this space. So check us out, sign up for our monthly newsletter, join EBN if that is an interest of yours. Membership is free, and we would love to have you as part of our community. So with that, thank you all very much for your participation this morning, and have a wonderful day.